My name is Debbie Mills. I've been teaching at Rogers since 2000. This is my 29th year teaching English for Toledo Public Schools. I have tried so many different approaches to try to increase student comprehension, student reading levels, student understanding. And one of the methods that seem to be working fairly well, I've introduced my students to closed reading. We've been using a program called Signposts. And now I want to begin to develop it more to where they're doing more of the direction, the metacognition themselves. So I'm using reciprocal teaching. Reciprocal teaching normally seems to occur more often in the middle schools, the junior highs, the upper grade schools, even some of the primary classes. And I've tried to modify it slightly to make it more user-friendly for my older kids, using the same general method. It is a research-based protocol strategy that uses a multiplicity, I should say, of strategies, including summarizing, predicting, questioning, clarifying. But the ultimate idea is to turn it over to the students, where the students are actually putting the questions together themselves and leading the discussion. I've tried literature circles, I've tried various other small group activities, and it seems that I think that the reciprocal teaching idea seems to work the best. I'll model it for the students, typically start with there, and then I will begin to have them practice it, reinforcing with my participation. I'll walk around and try to keep them on track, make sure they're kind of going where they need to go, and we'll do this multiple times. You can do it with both informational text and with narrative text, but right now I'm going to focus it more on informational text because their OSTs are 2 weeks away.
Widespread. Okay, I got that. Mm-hmm. Okay. Face.
To help kind of guide the students, I do have this reciprocal teaching dialogue leader discussion plan, and as a teacher who's doing it or trying to do this in the class, a large portion of it is teacher preparation. So I've already filled out my own. I have the article that they're going to be reading today. I've already gone through and kind of written some ideas for some questions. I've made some notes on my actual piece about some things I would want them to be able to identify and pull out so that I can kind of guide them in the thinking. If you just do it cold, you're going to struggle as well because it just needs to be planned out in terms of how it's spaced. Often with the grade schools, with the younger kids, you want to take and separate the chunks. Sometimes it's every paragraph. You can see on my article, I try to get the kids to notice and recognize subtitles because they often overlook those, and those are so imperative in understanding and comprehension. So I tell them that basically, if there's a subtitle, that's a chunk. So we'll break that down into the chunks that are on the worksheet that is provided by AFT. And basically, it's broken into segments and questions there's kind of guiding questions for the students to fill in. So for predict, what do you predict the selection will be about? They begin with I predict. So we're gonna look at the next section. What do you think the next section is gonna be about? Let's predict.
You can't read the first. Can we read the? You can't read the first sentence.
All right.
The assassination of
You think it's gonna be about the assassination? What makes you think it's about the assassination?
I don't know.
I think just by reading the first sentence that it's gonna be about the Russian Revolution and how chaotic it was over time.
Okay, that's nice. And they complete the statement. Summarize, the author told us, and they complete the statement. There's a place for them to write their questions, and they often want to write very broad questions based on the overall idea of the summary. And the whole idea with the questions is that they have to be text-based. That's the big impetus that we're kind of going through, is having the students go back into the text to find evidence. So their question, once they write their question, I have to be able to find the answer in the text.
Beaten, suffering 120,000 casualties.
So that kind of draws them back to the text as well. And then we end with the idea of clarifying. Are there any words or phrases that need to be clarified before we go on? Kind of maybe a brief discussion on where our prediction's correct. Let's move on to the next section. And at first it's fairly tedious, but the kids seem to like it. They really like, for whatever reason, creating the questions. And they often come up with questions very different than I do, but they really do find questions that they have to go back into the text to find the answer. So they're doing what they need to do, and it's exciting when they actually come up with things different than me, as long as it relates back to the original summary. I think that as teachers, one of the things we have to continually do is try new things to push. Sometimes it pushes us out of our comfort zone, but ultimately it's really about getting the kids to understand the process of learning. And I think that with reading comprehension, the rest of their life, I always tell them, up until high school, a lot of your reading has been learning how to read. And now you have to read in order to learn. And so there's a little bit different approach now. You have to be able to read a text and gain your own understanding from it and learn the material. So I need to, as a teacher, step back sometimes and think, where do my students need the most help in order to achieve them to be independent learners? And that's the major idea of reciprocal teaching, is to create independent learners who actually think about how they're learning and what they're learning.